Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. Tonight is April the 20th, 2015. The show is being recorded on April 19th, so a full day in advance. So bear that in mind as we discuss current events. Now, tonight we've got a lot of things to talk about. Last week I discussed Rand Paul and a number of reasons why we should not stand with Rand. And I had 20 reasons listed. There are more, but I had 20 listed. And I only got through 7, so I'm going to have to get the other 13 tonight. And we're going to touch on Syria as well, but in the second half of the show, I'm going to bring up a guest, a friend of mine who lives in Syria, and she will be speaking from Syria. Her name is Afraa. She's been on the show before, and we've done videos together before, so the videos are actually up at the website now. There's 2 videos that we've done recently, and of course, you'll be able to hear the audio of those videos tonight on the show in the second half, so stay tuned for that as well. Now, for those of you who don't know who I am, just tuning in for the first time, let me go through this as I do every week. I'm going to like to remind you to catch Truth on the Tracks here every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on UCY.TV. You can access the show's personal webpage at ucy.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. And on that page, you're going to be able to find a chat room. You'll find the archive versions of this show and the links to my more recent articles. If you're interested in my work specifically, I am a staff writer for ActivistPost.com, so most of my articles do come out at Activist Post. However, I also write for a number of other sites, and if you're interested in my work specifically, then I would encourage you to go to BrandonTurbeville.com, and that is the website where I repost all of my articles, all of the YouTube videos, all of the archive versions of this show. All of the relevant information goes up at BrandonTurbeville.com. And, of course, there's the link to the show, and there's a books tab if you're interested in taking a look at any of my books. There's contact features there as well. So all of the relevant information is located at BrandonTurbeville.com. So bear that in mind. Now, last week, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I have this article up at 20 Reasons I Will Not Stand with Rand. And we went through 7 of them last week. One of them was Rand Paul supports the killing of American citizens with drones on American soil without trial. We covered that last week. We talked about number 2, Rand Paul, an apologist for greed, about his constant harping on how great the rich are, and how much we need to protect the rich to the detriment of the poor, not extending unemployment benefits, but essentially creating a system that gives more money to the rich than already goes there. And number 3, Rand Paul supported letting BP completely off the hook. He did in the Gulf Horizon spill. Number 4, Rand Paul appears to oppose the minimum wage and other basic common sense labor protections. Absolutely. Number 5, Rand Paul is anti-union. Number 6, Rand Paul supported sanctions on Iran. And actually, I didn't get through 7. I only got through 6. So here's number 7. Rand Paul promotes neocon-style Islamophobia. And I'm covering Rand Paul. If anybody's wondering, why aren't you attacking Ted Cruz? Why aren't you attacking Hillary Clinton? Well, there's going to be time for that. And, of course, believe me, we're going to be attacking Hillary Clinton on this show. But the main reason I'm doing this is because Rand Paul, Hillary Clinton doesn't have much support in the alternative media, and neither does Ted Cruz, but Rand Paul does. And, most of the listeners to this show, if they're going to be tempted by any political candidate in 2016, it ain't going to be Hillary or Ted Cruz, it's Rand Paul. So I want to bring this information out to you so you can understand that Rand Paul is not a libertarian. Rand Paul's a Republican. And even more so, I think we can make a very good case that Rand Paul is a neocon. So, number 7, Rand Paul promotes neocon-style Islamophobia. Now, ever since 9/11 happened, and we've had this paranoia regarding Muslims in America and these, alleged dangers they all present to us. Muslims present danger to us as if Muslims can't be us. And this is all run rampant in American politics. And we've had situations of, outright harassment and discrimination, being subject to these ridiculous claims regarding the religion and the threat posed by the religion. We've had, Muslims in America have been easy targets for Republicans. And, I do sort of give a pass to the Democrats on that, because the Democrats are so obsessed with political correctness and protecting minority groups, and I put protecting in quotes. It means essentially using them as dupes and pets. But that's the way the system is created, that you have this division where the Republicans are sort of the Luddite reactionaries and the Democrats are these progressive socialist types. So fundamentalist Muslims do exist. We have to admit that. Most of them are funded by the United States and Saudi Arabia. But, that's neither here nor there to Rand Paul. Now, at 2013 Value Voters Summit, a big conservative organization, Rand Paul gave a speech where he focused almost entirely on what he called the war on Christianity. Now, there is a war on Christianity. Make no mistake about it. There is clearly a war on Christianity. But Paul's discussion centered around what he was basically describing to be a worldwide Muslim conspiracy to destroy Christianity and impose a Muslim dictatorship. Now, those statements aren't entirely without some grounding in reality. There does exist a number of people who wish to see Christianity destroyed and an Islamic caliphate created. Most of these individuals are those which the United States and its allies bankroll and use as an invading force for the purposes of destroying Bashar al-Assad or other secular Arab governments. But Paul's presentation revolved around a perspective that was itself rooted in religious fundamentalism. Right? This is typical Republican talking points in general. He had a few more of those, but of course the maintenance of a boogeyman to keep the American people frightened and supporting one more war, another military action, more police state measures, and that sort of thing. So this is what Paul has to say. He says, quote, "In the future, I see less and less likelihood that conventional wars and armies will defeat 50 million Muslims spread across the planet." End quote. So, to his credit, to be honest, he did criticize the arming of the Syrian death squads and the Muslim Brotherhood. But overall, the message was one of fear-mongering and playing along with, irrational belief that Muslims are the greatest threat to Western society. But notice he says, all these 50 million Muslims spread across the planet. All of them apparently are considered extremists. So Paul is smart enough to know the truth about the nature of Islamic fundamentalism. I mean, he's clearly smart enough to know that, but his speech was just catering to an audience of people who are convinced that Obama is a Muslim, that Muslims did 9/11, and that the Western world has to unite to destroy Islam, or secular societies will cease to exist. Of course, secular societies isn't exactly what they're fighting for, but the speech was just political posturing for Rand Paul. So number 8. Rand Paul's irrational and contradictory stance on Ukraine. This is very important. Now, if you're a listener to this show, you will know that the situation in Ukraine was clearly a coup that was concocted and implemented by Western powers. I'm talking about the deposition of Yanukovych, the seizing of power by fascists and Yatsenyuk and Poroshenko and those characters. Obama, is now presenting the position that democracy is speaking in the Eastern European areas, especially Ukraine, despite the neo-fascist governments that are actually in control. Of course, it's not really even just neo-fascists; they're actual fascists and Nazis. The State Department, congressmen like John McCain, they're calling for increased tensions by implementing greater sanctions against Russia. They want to arm the Ukrainian government. They want to send more actual personnel on the ground to stir things up. But despite the clear violation of international law and sovereignty of Ukraine, as well as the reignition of the Cold War, and that's probably even much more dangerous in terms of how it affects us individually. Rand Paul is in support of these moves, right? There's an op-ed published in Time, and this is what Rand Paul wrote. He says, "It is our role as a global leader to be the strongest nation in opposing Russia's latest aggression." So he's saying Russia was the aggressor here. "Putin must be punished for violating the Budapest Memorandum, and Russia must learn that the U.S. will isolate it if it insists on acting like a rogue nation." Sounds like George W. Bush, doesn't it? "This does not and should not require military action. No one in the U.S. is calling for this." Well, that's not entirely true. "But it will require other actions and leadership, both of which President Obama unfortunately lacks." So, Paul went out in the op-ed in Time. We won't read all of this, but he outlined a number of steps that he was going to take if he becomes president, and this includes imposing economic sanctions and visa bans, which Obama already did, kicking Russia out of the G8, building the Keystone XL pipeline, and of course he didn't go so far as to explain how helping a Canadian firm export tar sands oil to China would help intimidate Putin, but this is what he says: "I would reinstitute the missile defense shields President Obama abandoned in 2009 in Poland and the Czech Republic." He also says the real problem is that Russia's president is not currently fearful or threatened in any way by America's president, despite his country's blatant aggression. Wow. All right, so as stupid as these comments are, they are contradictions to earlier statements that Paul made in reference to the Russian invasion of Georgia a few years ago. This is Rand Paul for a few years ago. He says, "For example, we have to ask ourselves, who needs to be part of NATO? What does NATO need to be at this point? One of the big things for the neocons, the people in the Republican Party, sort of on the other side from where I come from, is they want Georgia to be a part of NATO. Well, Georgia sits right on the border of Russia. Do you think that might be provocative to put them in NATO? NATO's treaty actually says that if they're attacked, we will defend them. So if the treaty means something, that means all of a sudden we're at war with Russia. If Georgia would have become, Bush wanted Georgia to become part of NATO. Had they been part of NATO, we'd be at war with Russia right now. That's kind of a scary thing. We have to decide whether putting missiles in Poland is going to provoke the Russians, maybe not to war, but whether it's worth provoking them or whether we have the money to do it." All right, so it's in quote. That means that Paul's recent position on Ukraine is at best a flip-flop, again. And at worst, this earlier stance, this peace-oriented stance of being fair and being smart, was just a smokescreen for a buried neoconservatism. And I think that's probably the case. So, we had this writer for Mother Jones, Gage Skidmore. It is Mother Jones, but I want to read what he has to say. "So when Russia sent troops into Georgia on George W. Bush's watch, Paul didn't want to provoke Russia by placing missiles in Poland. Yet today, when Russia moves into Ukraine on Obama's watch," and again, that's a very poor representation. Again, that's the quality of Mother Jones. Russia didn't invade Ukraine, jackass, but it was the other way around. All right, but anyway, he's all for dispatching missiles to Poland to send a message to Putin. Does Paul care more about Crimea than Georgia, or does he care more about keeping a foot on the GOP's anti-Obama bandwagon? Well, yeah, I would be careful about presenting this as anything other than political grandstanding, or maybe holding back, or maybe covering up for a neocon stance early on to get a bunch of libertarians involved in supporting his platform. Number 9. I think this is quite telling. Rand Paul tried to get Abby Martin fired for asking a question. So, Ron Paul, not to be confused with his son, Little Rand, whether you agreed or disagreed with Ron, he had a reputation for encouraging open debate. Ron was, at least to my knowledge, open for discussion and the exchange of perspectives. His economics plan was absolutely atrocious, and even some of his social plan was pretty bad, the way he farmed it out to the states' rights. But Ron Paul would debate it, and it was open It was open discussion. It was, if you disagreed with him, that's fine. If you cornered Ron Paul and you wanted to ask him a question about a previous policy that he had, he didn't run away. He didn't bitch and moan and start crying. He just answered the question, and that's all he did. Well, his son, apparently, the apple fell quite far from the tree, because as Rand Paul was leaving the Capitol for a public press conference, Abby Martin, who was then of RT, and Luke Rudkowski of We Are Change confronted Rand and asked him about his recent endorsement of Mitt Romney. And that was, again, this is a while back, but he had just endorsed Mitt Romney for president. Since Romney was, he represented so many things that Paul allegedly opposed. So Rudkowski and Abby also asked Paul about the position on the Bilderberg group. Well, as you can see, the little whiny rodent was obviously irritated, and he was very tight-lipped about the questions that he was being asked, and he was pretending that Rudkowski and Martin weren't even there. So he's walking down the street, just ignoring them, won't answer him. He starts talking to his aides and that sort of thing. But the video went viral because a lot of libertarians were a little surprised to see him acting like a whiny rodent. And to Abby Martin's surprise, she discovered that RT had received a number of calls from a staffer with the Media Relations Committee at the Capitol claiming that she could be arrested and charged with trespassing for what she did. The staffer also threatened to strip Martin of her press credentials, and she was a little taken aback by this. She was, didn't understand why simply asking a question of a congressional drone would bring all of this wrath. And it was discovered later on that it was Rand Paul who had filed the complaint directly. And I've got a link to that in my article. You can click on it. You can see Abby Martin discussing the issue, the incident. But it's clear that Rand Paul tried to get her fired because she asked the whiny rodent a question. Now, number 10, Rand Paul is a supporter of Israel. Now, despite the hysterical rantings of AIPAC, and despite the hysteria of the Israel lobby, and the hysteria of the Zionist Christians, Rand Paul has expressed an undying loyalty to the non-state of Israel. Rand Paul's reputation as a weak supporter of the settler state is unfair, and it's not a weak support. It's it only comes as a result of the fact that anything but rabid warmongering and Israel worship and insane war psychosis is considered weak support by Israel and its operatives and its lobby and its dupes in the Zionist Christian community. Any questions regarding Paul's total fealty to Israel should have been dispelled when he went and visited the place in 2013 at the behest of Zionist Christian evangelical leaders and the relevant Israel lobby. When he returned to the United States, Paul spoke to Breitbart News, and this is what he had to say. Absolutely, we stand with Israel. What I think we should do is announce to the world, and I think it is pretty well known, that any attack on Israel will be treated as an attack on the United States, end quote. I'll read that again. Absolutely, we stand with Israel. What I think we should do is announce to the world, and I think it is pretty well known, that any attack on Israel will be treated as an attack on the United States, end quote. So for any of you who think that Rand Paul's a little bit, is not an Israel supporter, there you go. He's an Israel supporter, okay? He thinks we should treat Israel as the 51st state, just like any good Zionist. Any good Democrat, any good Republican believes we should fight to the last American to support a rogue state, a settler state that doesn't have a right to exist in its current form, a perpetrator of genocide, the biggest warmonger in the Middle East, well, besides Saudi Arabia, but we're supposed to fight and die to the last American for that. On the basis of nothing but maybe a lot of money, some brainwashing, and some religious propaganda. Now, Rand has combined more, rational sentiment to stop sending American money to foreign governments with Islamophobia. That's also another point I want to make. There is a very rational sentiment about not sending any more American money abroad, and I have to support that, because America first. Yeah, you're damn right, America first. We should be concerned with what's happening here long before we're concerned with what's happening across the world. Doesn't mean we can't do things across the world. We absolutely could, and we should if we can. But if we nationalize the Federal Reserve, it'll be a whole lot easier to do. But this is Paul. His ideology here is much more skewed. Now, neocon ideals, patronizing flag burning rhetoric and all that kind of stuff. That's what Paul is specializing in now. His allegedly isolationist policies don't extend to Israel, though. This is what Paul has to say. The one thing I've said over and over again is that we should quit sending money to countries that are burning our flag, and that that's the one thing I think you'll never see in Israel is anyone burning our flag, end quote. Well, that's a hell of a reason to start World War III, isn't it? Because they burned our flag. That's real political acumen, right? We should judge foreign policy, international politics, something that could create thermonuclear war if we get it wrong, based on whether or not somebody burns a piece of cloth. Well, congratulations. And you'll never see anyone, and you never see Israel, you'll never see in Israel is anyone burning our flag. I doubt that's true. You see people burning a flag in this country, but that's a side issue. It doesn't matter whether they burn the damn flag or not. Now, Paul has paid lip service to the idea of ending foreign aid to all countries, including Israel. It's also true that Paul supports ending foreign aid to all of Israel's enemies and its victims, like Palestine and Egypt, before Israel's welfare payments are even brought up to be touched. Right? If foreign aid is cut off from Palestine while aid to Israel is continued, that would be a policy that would clearly go great length in the direction of furthering the annihilation of the Palestinian people, and that should be obvious to anybody who looks at the situation. So Paul could theoretically cut back on Israeli foreign aid, but by then the situation would be irrevocable for Palestinians, which would have ended the discussion early on. So this is what Paul has to say. The biggest threat to our nation right now is our debt. This does not mean that we have to reassess who to give aid to, and when we do, this does mean that we have to reassess who to give aid to, and when we do reassess that, I would begin with countries that are burning our flag and chanting death to America. No one is accusing Israel of that. Well, I guess not. And nobody's accusing. I love this flag burning. You would have thought that this kind of stupidity would have evaporated, in terms of mass political capital. The flag burning issue, you think by 1975 that wouldn't have been an issue anymore, but apparently people are really stuck with that. You burn the flag, and that's all that nationalism comes out, and they're ready to go off and grease up the guns and start another war over burning the flag. Isn't that something? How silly we are as a people. This makes. I'm not even going to continue with that. So this is Paul's principles again, only extending to certain individuals, certain organizations, certain countries. So we also got to mention that Rand Paul was recently announced his intention to introduce a new bill that would suspend U.S. aid to the Palestinians unless the Palestinian authorities publicly recognize Israel's right to exist and declare a ceasefire with Israel. Well, one could argue that that's already happened. But Paul's bill, if it had been passed, would have allowed the Palestinian leaders 5 weeks to publicly declare Israel's right to exist and initiate and declare the ceasefire, which means that they stop shooting while the Israelis continue to slaughter them. Failure of the Palestinian authorities to comply would have resulted in the suspension of the annual $400 million in chicken feed provided to the Palestinians by the United States. Now, this bill is, or was, seen as a reaction to a reconciliation between Fatah which was led by, or is led by, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and Hamas, which was the Islamist organization that governs the Gaza Strip, that was created by Israel, so it's probably not the best idea for Fatah and Hamas to unite. But Paul said about that bill, it says, quote, Israel cannot be expected to negotiate with an entity that does not believe it should exist and has used terrorist tactics to seek its end. Well, the state of Israel is based on terrorism, and the state of Israel is based on the idea that other people don't exist. It's extremely racist. But to Rand Paul, it just depends on which race and which country which race and which terrorist organization you belong to, whether or not he supports you. So he didn't make any mention of the historical terrorism of Israeli organizations like Irgun or the present-day genocide that happens day after day after day. He didn't make any mention of that. But he did say that if Palestinians agree to the terms, the regional peace talks, quote, can move forward with two willing partners. So that bill didn't really get anywhere. Now we're going to have to, I'm going to try to get through one more point here, point 11, and we're going to keep talking about Little Rand until I get through all 20 points, because you people need to hear it. And then we're going to go to Afraa in Syria. But this is point 11. Rand Paul seeks punishment for whistleblowers. Now, Rand Paul's father, Ron, wisely called for clemency for Edward Snowden, and I have my own thoughts about Edward Snowden about what he is. But Ron called for clemency for Edward Snowden because Snowden blew the whistle on these egregious methods of spying and surveillance on American citizens by the NSA. But Rand has been suggesting that Snowden, and by default all whistleblowers who expose government wrongdoing, should serve time in prison. So this is what Rand told This Week. He says, do I think that it's okay to leak secrets and give up national secrets and things that could endanger lives? I don't think that's okay either, but I think the courts are now saying that what he revealed was something the government was doing was illegal. So I think personally he probably would come home for some penalty of a few years in prison, which would be probably not unlike what James Clapper probably deserves for lying to Congress, and that maybe if they served in a prison cell together, we'd become further enlightened as a country over what we should and shouldn't do. Well, notice the operative statement here, right? He believes that I think he should come home for a penalty of a few years in prison. So, obviously he's saying that Edward Snowden, for revealing the illegal actions of the U.S. government, should serve time in prison. So his stance on whistleblowers should be concerning to any of you supporters out there who might be worried about government abuse of power or corporate malfeasance. So, just bear that in mind. Next week we're going to get into probably point 12 and beyond. Maybe, I don't exactly have the time to do it now because we're about to get set up for our guest. So we'll cover that again next week. The article is 20 Reasons I Will Not Stand with Rand. It's over at BrandonTurbeville.com. Okay, I'm here with my friend from Syria, Afraa, and we're going to discuss a number of different issues. We've done a video before, but we're going to talk about a number of different issues this time. And one of the first issues she wanted to get into were the comparison between Yemen and Syria, and what's happening in Yemen versus what's happening in Syria, and how it's being presented. So, do you want to kind of take it from here?
Yes. Thank you for having me again, Brandon. What is going on in Yemen is a real disaster, humanitarian disaster. Finally, the Arab make the coalition, but this coalition is not against Israel, not to defend the Arab world. This coalition is to be with Israel and to destroy the Arab world and to divide it more and more. Saudi Arabia and her allies, Egypt, Jordan, they asked Pakistan to join them, and the original one is USA. They do this in Yemen as a colonial project for USA, and they ask all these Arab countries to join them, to not look at a state attack another one, to bring the legit cover to this operation. By the way, they do the same in Syria, but not in open way. They do it in hidden way, under the name that ISIS is bombing Syria. Arab Spring is going on in Syria, but in fact, same hands, same print. It is Saudi Arabia, it is Arab countries. They do this in Syria. They send their mercenaries to Syria to destroy and bomb it. You can see they destroy the infrastructure in Yemen. Also they did, and they still doing in Syria. And the Arab League said this is right, and they got the international approval to attack Yemen, kids, civilians. This is a real disaster, and this is war crimes. What do you think about this?
I think it's telling, because in Yemen, our media says the rebels are evil because they're trying to overthrow a president, and we have to protect the president, and we have to have a legitimate government. But in Syria, the rebels are freedom fighters, and the president is illegitimate, and they have to overthrow the president. If we believed in true governmental structure and elected government, then it wouldn't be different for Yemen and Syria. It would be the same policy, but it's very different. We support the rebels in Syria, but not in Yemen.
Yeah, for Syria they used to exchange rules. They make victims in Syria, criminal in Yemen victims. The president in Yemen named by GCC and not by his people. But our president, we voted for him, but they still refuse this, and they want to topple him. But this is our words to say it. And the rebels here, which they are real mercenaries, they committed crimes in YouTube, in reality. They are freedom seekers. And in Yemen, the real Yemeni people who want their rights in independent president, they attack them, they bomb them. That is really irony, and it's hurting. Also, by the way, I want to mention a genocide happened in Aleppo yesterday. It was the occasion of Easter, and the gift was to bomb Aleppo by those moderate rebels, Free Syrian Army or ISIL. Not the name is important. The important thing is what they are really doing. And the The building became pieces after they bombed it. The bodies is stick on the wall. You need DNA to recognize the bodies. That means those rebels got advanced missiles from the West, and they should stop sending them such weapons for us. And before this genocide, another one happened in Hama, the village of Al-Mabouja, and no media reporting this. They still say those are moderate rebels.
How many people were killed in Aleppo?
Many people killed, maybe 14 or more, and wounded in critical situation in hospital till now. Most of them from Armenian people and also Muslim people. The reporter was crying because he said this is a new kind of missile reached to those terrorists. As I told you, the building became two pieces and small pieces, and the bodies became so small and stick to the wall in the morning of the Easter. And did you hear this from your media? Don't think so.
No.
Media is busy now in another thing. Also, they talk about Yarmouk camp, and they accused us, and they make blind eye about another issue happened in Syria. Even in Yarmouk, not our army who imposed the siege. It is from inside the Yarmouk, a party called Aknaf Bayt al-Maqdis. They were supporting the wing of Hamas, the political wing, Khalid Mishal, which is living in Qatar, which is a real agent, and we know all his brotherhood, Islamic Brotherhood, and they were terrorize their own people. They want them to forget something, to forget that they have the right to return back to Palestine, and they were coordinate with Hamas, with Jabhat al-Nusra, and they also make it easy to ISIS to enter Al-Yarmouk, and our army protect them. And by the way, our army all the time do the military operation in surgical way to not hurt civilians. For that we lost many soldiers. We can bomb, but we never do this. With that, they all the time accuse us that we bomb civilians. When some civilians, those who bomb Aleppo, by the way, they are existing in all city of Aleppo. If you bomb them, the society will say we bomb civilians. All the time they exchange the rule, make civilians, they are not civilians, they are ISIS, and make the real ISIS civilians. And all those just agents to Saudi Arabia, which is serving USA and Israel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Yarmouk is the area that they entered recently, because we know that many groups like Hamas are actually working with the Israelis, even though they say otherwise.
Yeah.
And here in our media, we keep hearing about barrel bombs. Do you know about this? Our media is every day they are posting stories.
That means we don't have advanced missiles as the rebels lately have. I told you about, if you see Aleppo now, you will cry. Upside down. Most victims are kids. All their guilt also, they want to celebrate this. Also, they bomb the Muslims. They don't care. This is not Islam. If they think this is the notion of Islam, Islam not as this. If Hamas thinking they do something for God, God didn't ask you to kill his people. There is a concept. You can destroy Al-Kaaba, the holy Kaaba. It's easier to the God to spread blood of his people. And this is not Islam, but they use the Islam here as a drug. And this here is Islam, here is not Islam, this is kafir, this is not kafir. It's shameful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you wanted also to mention about the role of women in Syria, because we again, our media gives us a lot of propaganda about Syria and the way they presented the role of women there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a woman in Syria?
If we go back to the past, to the old past, you know about Zenobia, the queen of Palmyra. It was Syrian, from Syria. So the women in Syria used to be in the ruling side, and also in the presidency of our president Hafez al-Assad. The most important thing, the priority for him, that the woman to be well educated, and he made the education for free almost, to every woman can be well educated, and his advisor was a woman, and now she is also an advisor, Dr. Busaina Shaban, and also we have ministers, women ministers, and the vice president is a woman, Dr. Nujrah Al-Attar, and because woman is important to build the society hand by hand with the men. And look at Saudi Arabia, who want to bring democracy to the Arab world.
Yeah, I find it highly ironic that Saudi Arabia claims that it's concerned about democracy or human rights. It doesn't have either.
Saudi Arabia, I can't forget what they are doing now in Yemen. They bombed also the silos. You can see the wheat floats over the Sea of Aden, and that means they starve the people in Yemen, these poor people here. Most of our countries are rich by wealth, by oil, but the people are poor because the West take the advantage, not us. And it is not allowed to have independent president. For that, they fight in Yemen to not let any party come out of the shadow of Saudi Arabia. Yemen is in the south of Saudi, and Saudi wants that it makes a real threat to Saudi Arabia. So Yemen still be under the shadow of Saudi, and for her oil, and Saudi serve USA by her turn.
Why do you think Egypt is taking part in the bombing of Yemen?
Also for petrodollar, they paid for this president. And as I told you, they need this many countries to join them to give the legitimacy to this aggression on Yemen, to not say this is only a state attack another one. Unfortunately, the Arab League is shameful. They wanted that to happen to Syria all the time, but the obstacle was Russia and China. But they did it in another way. They sent their mercenaries, supply them with weapons, with medicine, anything they need.
Do you think that at some point in the future that they will use Yemen as an example, as a precedent to go in to Syria, to do in Syria what they did in Yemen?
That's what they try to do. I told you, this coalition, we waited for it for a long time after every attack on Gaza, on Lebanon also, but they made it finally. But why? To be the troops, the real troops of USA. USA sent her troops to Iraq, to Afghanistan, and people start to say that America is attack every country she wants, so this is her alternative of her. She made this Arab NATO, now they are her real troops here. So if they succeeded in Yemen, why not? But I hope no. They used Saddam Hussein to invade Kuwait, then you see, give Saddam Hussein up. I hope that will happen soon to the royal family in Saudi Arabia to be given up.
It might, because I think eventually Saudi Arabia will outlive their usefulness to the U.S.
Yeah.
The question, Idlib, what is the situation in Idlib now?
Our problem, Brandon, is our borders. If we talk in geopolitically, so Idlib is next to Turkey, and Turkey became, sorry to the word, but became a shoot to the west to enter the European Union. And Turkey all the time lets those terrorists smuggle into Syria and support them, as I told you, by more mercenaries. They train them. CIA also trained those mercenaries. But in Idlib, I think everything will be better because our army surrounded the country. And as I told you, we do the operation in surgical way to make civilians in peace.
Yeah, so the army has surrounded Idlib then and is about to retake it.
The most important is to cut the line of aid from Turkey. When you cut these lines, you can retake it. And I have faith in our army. And by the way, in this time when they bomb Aleppo and when they do the genocide in Hama, at the same time you see the conference in Moscow between two Syrians. For me, just one Syrian represent us. It's a formal delegation. The other delegations of the so-called opposition or rebels, while they make negotiation in Moscow, the troops of them makes crimes here in Syria, and it's good to make such conference without any interference of foreign, just Syrian. But for most of the personalities of those rebels, some of them follow some of their masters, because they refuse to sign that this terrorism in Syria is sponsored by Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Some of those in the opposition side refused to sign this. This is really depressed.
The group that is representing the terrorists, is this the Syrian National Coalition that is attending the conference?
No, the National Coalition refused to join this.
Okay.
This conference because they call themselves they belong to countries which called herself the friends of Syrian people. They are the enemy of Syrian people. When you don't ask to lift sanction on Syrian people, when you are in countries banned dealing with Syrian people, with our banks, banned food on medicine from Syrian people, and when you ask Obama to bomb Syria in 2013, you are not represent Syrian people, you just follow colonial agenda, and you want crime. That's what is going on in Yemen now.
Right.
They live outside in 5-star hotels, luxury life. And people here is starving.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, by my time,
Okay.
as you are an American journalist, and you are all the time spreading the truth, and you help us by your platform about the election in your country in 2016. If there is any hope of changing for us, because we are the side who pay the price.
Well, unfortunately, our elections are not really free. We elect presidents, but we don't select presidents. Unfortunately, we are given two choices, but they're very similar. For instance, the Obama administration carried out the same agenda as the Bush administration, and now we have Hillary Clinton on one side, and then we have people like Jeb Bush or Ted Cruz on the other. And I'm sorry, what?
Senator John McCain also or not?
John McCain is not running for president this year, but Lindsey Graham might run for president. And Lindsey Graham has supported every war that we've ever been in, and has supported wars that we haven't been in yet. So he's actually from the state where I live, and he's a horrible individual. And unfortunately, both sides can agree that Assad has to go. They may disagree slightly on the method, but none of them are friends of Syria. And I wouldn't look to American elections for any hope in terms of the Syrian people.
For Syria.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's the American election.
They changed by name but same line. Even President Obama said he promises people just no war, but you see more war than ever. And I want to talk also about something about moderate rebels and ISIS. Now, also, if you are in the media, you know that genocide happened in Tikrit, Iraq. They kidnap some soldiers from Iraq military, and they cut them, beheaded them, make them small pieces, and throw them in the river. It is something horrible atrocity. And by the way, to recognize people, you need to make a DNA test. This is committed by ISIS and media broadcasting this. Back to Syria, to 2011. The massacre in Jisr al-Shur also happened to Syrian soldiers, but by whom? Committed by the freedom seeker, the rebels. Same scene, same print. They cut them, they throw them in the river, and when the family wanted to recognize their beloved people, they also made the DNA test. So why here they are rebels, freedom seeker, and there they are ISIS? They are same. They are the same.
Yeah, and it's presented that way because it suits the propaganda that the West wants to inflict on us, really, on Americans. There was a genocide that took place, or atrocity in Hama early on, I think in 2011 maybe, where many of the people were killed. They were shot and stabbed, and our media reported it and said that the Syrian army did it. And
we lost many soldiers because we don't bomb, even when there is terrorists inside the city. Some places as a babysitter environments to some terrorists. We don't bomb this. We made it in surgical way to not hurt any civilian, and in this way we lose soldiers. And here, why I made this comparison between moderate rebels and ISIS to ask those to stop sending and arming the moderate rebels, stop sending advanced weapons, sophisticated weapons. It is enough. It is enough.
Yes, that's when we do radio shows here, I always try to point out that if you want to stop ISIS, then we should stop funding them, and that would stop ISIS.
Yes, thank you for this. Exactly. If you want to make the real coalition here who is against those terrorists is our army, Syrian Arab Army, Hezbollah, and Iran. Iran is not interfering in a country, but supporting the nation, not as America ordered to do. Iran not. Iran just supports us, our economy, our currency. That is good. But America is the real enemy. Israel, for sure, also. And Saudi Arabia now.
Have you heard much? Go ahead.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia is their agent here. Sorry.
Well, have you heard in Syria? Have you heard much about the nuclear deal between the United States and Iran?
Yeah, we respect this because Iran didn't give up the resistance access, and that makes her as a powerful superpower nation as USA, and that is good. And Iran wanted to lift all sanctions on her. That is also good for her economy. Even regardless if USA is honest in this or not, but we can't trust Iran knows what she is going to do later.
Yeah, just to give you an example of what this situation is like in the United States, we had 47 senators that signed a letter and sent it to Iran and said that they would not honor the nuclear deal if they came in power. And we have senators across the Congress saying that they want to bomb Iran. And it's funny because they say it will only take a few days, just a few days of bombing. That's what they told us about Iraq, and people believe them. And this is now 12 years on. So there are a lot of people in the U.S. government that want to go to war with Iran and with Syria.
In Syria, they are doing by proxy war. They want more. They want the same in Yemen. For Iran, I hope all the best for her, but yes, no one can trust US. But that's good that Iran have her nuclear program. That is good to make some balance in the region with Israel. Israel have everything, every power, every kind of power.
Well, John McCain wants to send troops into Syria, and I think we should send John McCain. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. We'll see you next week.
For more news, visit pigminenews.com.